The sanctity of human life is under assault. Find out how and what you can do about it in this edition of Life Matters with Brian Johnston, Western Regional Director of the National Right to Life Committee. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on the culture that emanates from that singular idea that you were made by God, and that you have been endowed with certain inalienable rights, and the first one is the right to be alive. The government did not give you that right. The government, in fact, has a duty to protect your life and the life of all vulnerable citizens. That's the job of government, an extraordinary idea, and it's transformed our culture. It's the basis of our culture. But there's a battle of ideas going on right now. In fact, as we record this in the middle of February of 2019, we are looking at some of the most extraordinary ideas that our nation has ever faced, and the battle is very, very real. You are living in an extraordinary moment in history, and we want to help you understand that. In a moment, you're going to hear from some old friends. You're going to hear from Father Frank Pavone. For you Catholic folks, you know that he is the president and director of Priests for Life. His job is to help Roman Catholics fully understand their responsibility to support and be advocates for the legal right to life. He's a great friend, and we're glad to have him on the program. We're also going to hear from the President of the United States. Why is this important? Because in January of 2019, the issue of the right to life came front and center. First, on January 22nd, there was a measure passed in the New York State Legislature and signed by Governor Cuomo. This legalized infanticide. We're going to talk about that and what that means. You see, it's not merely a metaphor to call it a battle. There literally are lives at stake. That if we win this battle of ideas, again, laws are merely ideas that are enforced. If our opponents win those ideas and get them into law, they want people to be killed for some supposedly good reason. Oh, we need abortion because there's just too many kids, or the mom doesn't want the child at this moment. She doesn't feel like she can raise a child, or whatever the reasons may be. And there are many, many reasons given. Many of the reasons are conjecture reasons, and they're based often on feelings, not on objective facts. Very rarely is a woman's life in danger. You hear that said, oh, if a woman's life is in danger. But that's not the basis of Roe v. Wade, and that's not the basis on which abortions are being done. In Roe v. Wade and in Doe v. Bolton, that's the companion decision. And you can go back in our podcast and listen about Roe and Doe so you understand them. But the Supreme Court said not just life, it went much further and said health. And the Supreme Court itself then defined health to include emotions. So simply on the basis of emotions, human babies can be killed in your country, in your state. And if you live in California, you are paying for those abortions. That's how real this battle is. But as you know, in the right to life, there are other people being killed. There are people being killed through euthanasia. In California, it's ostensibly voluntary euthanasia. Their emotions have to be such that, I think I have an illness, and I may die. It could be really bad. By the way, they're not in pain. Go ahead and read the studies everywhere that assisted suicide is legalized. People aren't killed because they're in pain, because there are plenty of painkillers that are very effective, and they don't put people into stupor. They're usually killed for emotional reasons of depression, and they're afraid of what the future might hold. So the laws are allowing human beings to be killed. This is a direct violation of the right to life. Right now, one of the leaders on the Supreme Court for the pro-death culture, I'll just have to be perfectly honest, using intentional medical killing to remove problem people, whether they be babies or whether they be the sick and infirm, the intentional medical killing of babies is being advocated by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is known as the feminist leader on the Supreme Court. And if you know much about her background, again, you can go back to our podcast. There's an entire podcast dedicated to who Ruth Bader Ginsburg really is. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg literally quotes sections of progressive thought, specifically from Karl Marx and Engels regarding the nature of the family and how marriage, as we understand traditional marriage, and even common law marriage, oppresses women because it forces her into childbirth. And unless that freedom to not be oppressed, unless that freedom is exercised, then she can't be truly free. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, again, go back and listen to her. She is essentially a Marxist in her view of the feminist ideology, that it isn't just the lack of money that oppresses people in society, it's the structure of society. And for feminists, it is in fact traditional marriage and traditional child rearing that limits what a woman may want to do. For the sake of feminist freedom, then, killing a human baby is absolutely necessary. And when we come back, you're going to see that in this new issue of post-birth abortion in the state of New York and in other states where it's promoted, Congress in February attempted to get a measure to have Congress ban infanticide and late-term abortion. And Nancy Pelosi quickly moved to not allow further debate. So this is an issue that is on us right now. It's imperative that you understand the range of this issue and why it's important to your life and to the nature of the culture and the laws that guide and inform your culture. This is probably the most significant moment in recent American history, and you're living through it. We'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Life Matters is sponsored by the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee. To find out more on how you can help and be involved right where you are, go to californiaprolife.org. That's californiaprolife.org. We'll tell you how you can get involved in your local community, how you can be effective if you want to be a pro-life speaker. We have training programs and open doors of opportunity for you to speak on the life issue. If you'd like to donate your car or a boat, you can do that at californiaprolife.org. Car Easy makes it easy, and you find that on our website. We get the most of any donation program. Car Easy allows us to get the most out of your car. Maybe you're not getting the trade-in value you wanted. Maybe it's just not running the way it used to. Let your car be used for life. Go to californiaprolife.org and find out what you can do to make a difference. californiaprolife.org.
Be sure to subscribe to the Life Matters podcast with Brian Johnston. Go to lifematters.life to subscribe. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're talking about the battle of ideas right now in February of 2019. Where is Ruth Bader Ginsburg? She apparently does not even show up at the Supreme Court right now. And I think you may know why. If she goes into medical retirement, or God forbid, if she passes away, you are going to see the most volatile public debate on the nature of judicial appointments. If you look at the Kavanaugh hearings, they won't hold a candle to the replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why? Because all of it gets down to the right to life debate. So we want you to understand what's at stake in this debate. Again, there's previous programs. Go to our podcast, lifematters.life. Look at the specifics of the program. What is the thinking of progressivism when it comes to life? Where did this progressive idea come from that allows the government to dispose of human beings? That is actually not a new idea. But right now we're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she is of huge significance for the preservation of abortion on demand. As you know, the president, and let's hear from the president right now. The president of the United States was very, very clear in his State of the Union address. Mr. President.
Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God.
Well, that is President Donald J. Trump from his State of the Union in 2019. A clear, clarion call for a respect for human life to be asserted once again, and asking Congress to do so. Well, the very next day, Representative Ann Wagner of Missouri introduced again the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which would protect a child that's been born alive. As you have heard, in New York State, they had that Protection Act, but Governor Cuomo signed it away on January 22nd, 2019. There was actually a law that said if you are in the process of abortion and a child is born alive, you have to protect that baby. No, the New York State legislature and Governor Cuomo proudly said, no, you can kill that child. The reason you need to understand is that that is the radical feminist ideology, that having a child is the burden. It isn't just pregnancy. It is the cultural burden of motherhood that a woman needs to free herself from by ending that child's life. That is the desire of Marxist thought. And again, if you go back, I read to you from both Marx and Engels on the nature of family and the oppression of women. This is very much at the heart of feminist ideology. Radical feminist ideology is, in fact, a Marxist creation. And so this is a very serious battle of ideas. Representative Ann Wagner presented that on the floor of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi, who quite ironically had invited the president of Planned Parenthood to the State of the Union address as her guest, the world's largest owner of abortion clinics and America's largest owner of abortion clinics, sat in the gallery as Nancy Pelosi's guest as partial birth abortion and post-birth abortion was described by the president and roundly condemned. And yet Nancy Pelosi is going to defend that because this is part of the battle of ideas. Again, it's very important to recognize what these laws are doing. Let me quote to you from Congressman Steve Scalise. He was an original co-sponsor of the bill, along with many other Republican legislators. Not a single Democrat is allowed to sponsor this. And that's what you have to recognize in the new Democrat Party. They are forced into lockstep. So now the Democrat Party is requiring all Democrat legislators to support abortion on demand and specifically to support infanticide. This is what Congressman Scalise said. I introduced this resolution to begin the process of forcing a vote on Congresswoman Wagner's important piece of legislation, especially after horrific actions taken in New York and Virginia to permit infanticide. The silence from congressional Democrats is deafening and shameful. Every member of Congress, regardless of party, needs to go on record against infanticide, and we must immediately take action to stop it. The American people deserve to know where their representatives stand on this crucial issue. Now, that was Congressman Steve Scalise, Republican of Louisiana, and if you recall, he himself had been shot and seriously wounded at a congressional baseball game, and he was shot by a radical progressive who want to change the culture through political radical means. So Congressman Scalise is very clear. This battle is on us now, and I dare say it will define the battle ahead, the replacement for Justice Ginsburg, the elections for president, the appointment to any position now, but especially court positions and the highest positions. So you are involved in this battle. And unless you're prepared for it, unless you're equipped to understand the nuances of this battle, the media is here to confuse you. They want to misrepresent, as they always have. They've misrepresented Roe v. Wade. It's been implied it's only for the first trimester. Well, if that's the case, then why is it that they won't allow banning late-term abortions? Now, Roe v. Wade and its companion Doe v. Bolton brought abortion on demand, and in particular, even for emotional reasons. But it's not even the woman who makes that decision. It's the abortionist who says, I feel and believe her health, her emotions may be damaged. So Roe and Doe are licensed for killing human babies in the womb. That's what they are. This battle is very, very real. And finally, it's coming to a head. The Democrats, the radicals, Planned Parenthood are admitting they want the right to kill babies, regardless of the child's age. It's extraordinary. Last month, you heard an interview on this program, go back in the podcast, with Peter Singer, who is philosophically the father of post-birth abortion. Understand their thinking. To them, it means freedom. It's pure madness, and it holds human beings' lives to be cheap and disposable.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Do you have a car you aren't using anymore? You can donate your car or boat, mobile home, trailer, or motorcycle, even property, to California Pro-Life Council and get the highest amount possible in a tax deduction. That's right. Our donation program doesn't just turn around and dump the car. Our volunteer team of experts get the car in its best reasonable shape and then sell it at auction to the highest bidder. You get the best tax deduction, and California Pro-Life gets the highest amount that it can to assist us in reaching Californians for life. If you'd like to get the most out of your car, boat, or motorhome, go to CaliforniaProLife.org. Scroll to the bottom of the page and click on Donate Car. That's CaliforniaProLife.org. Your car can make a difference, and make a difference for life.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. I told you we'd hear from Father Frank Pavone. Father Frank, again, has been a friend for many years. He labors in the vineyards of the Catholic Church, trying to make sure that the Catholic Church understands. And by that, understands that this is not just a Catholic issue or depends on what a particular prelate says in your diocese. This is an issue of the law, not of religion. This is an issue about society itself. Will we live in a civilized society? So Father Frank is a great friend and, again, a hero in the pro-life movement. As I introduce him here, we're talking about this same bill. We're here at the Walk for Life in San Francisco. You can hear some background noise, but I'm back with a very good and special friend. That's Father Frank Pavone, a priest for life. Father Frank, so good to see you
Well,
again.
It's great to be with you, and it's great to be back in San Francisco for this Walk for Life.
Yes, and some things have been happening now. As people hear this, they're going to remember in the news that this January 22nd of 2019, the Catholic governor of New York proudly signed in a new abortion law. They had a law that protected babies after 24 weeks, but Roe did not allow that to go into effect. But the state legislature and Governor Cuomo signed a new law that allows abortion to the moment of birth. But it goes beyond that. No survivors. Kill the survivors. That goes beyond Roe. And the state of New York had a health and safety regulation that if a baby was born alive in the course of an abortion, well, that the law would protect that baby. Governor Cuomo struck even that. So even survivors must be killed in the state of New York. It's stunning. It's almost hard to believe.
It is, and it shows the extremism of the Democrat Party on abortion and of the abortion lobby itself. You know, the silver lining to all of this, Brian, is that when you and I have spoken over the decades to people all across our country trying to wake up their consciences that, hey, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton ushered in abortion on demand, they don't believe us.
Yeah.
Right? They say, oh, what are you talking about? You're making this up. You know, you can't abort a baby after 6 months. Well, you certainly can. It has been going on. And what this move in New York does is it proves us right about how extreme the other side is. And if we can exploit that, I mean, the worst thing that can happen now is that they get away with passing this, which they did, but then that nobody knows about it. But if we sound the alarm, which is so important that we're talking about it now and that the listeners will spread the word, then I think we can awaken the conscience of a lot of Americans who say, listen, wait a minute, I may not be against abortion. I may not want to see Roe overturned. I'm pro-choice. But in the third trimester, right up until birth, non-physicians doing abortion, not even protecting babies who survive abortion. This is insane. And a lot of our fellow citizens who are pro-choice and who are Democrat are going to say this is insane once we point out what is happening.
Yes, and I think this particular measure is so significant. In fact, even Hillary Clinton was there at the celebrating this, and how this really represents the radical feminist ideology. And we're taught culturally by the zeitgeist, by the media, well, this is so women can not be pregnant. But that's not exactly true, because this new bill basically says, no, this human baby can be killed up through birth. And the goal is to end that life. It isn't just to end the pregnancy.
It's to end the life, right.
It's to end the life. And this goes directly against the Dred Scott decision and the whole idea that another human being can be chattel, can be property of someone stronger, whether that be officially declared as the slave owner or the mother, but that a human being can own another human being and can end its life. We're looking at the very premise of law and justice, and it's extraordinary that people have not yet recognized how extreme and what a violation this is of common law and American law.
And as I've often said, once you break the principle, at one point in the spectrum, you break it at all points. What I mean is the principle being, as we've so often discussed, the natural law and then the principles on which our American law is based. You break that principle that every person must be protected, and then nobody's protected.
That's
Even
right.
though you might, on paper, say, oh, well, it's just the unborn who can be aborted, but everyone else is safe. Everyone else is not safe, because you've broken the principle that protects us all. So if the court can say, the babies in the womb, they're not persons, then it can say any human being is not a person. It's not saying that right now, but you've planted the poison seed that can make it possible to say it later. That's why, and when we talk about reversing Roe v. Wade eventually, and that's what's motivating a lot of these state laws, right? They're afraid that they're going to lose the, quote, protections of Roe v. Wade, and so we better take matters into our own hands.
That's what they're doing.
And encode abortion more strongly in the law. Okay, so, I'm glad they're afraid that Roe v. Wade is going to fall, because the Supreme Court is moving more in our direction. And most people, of course, the common wisdom is, well, when this court reverses Roe v. Wade, it'll return the matter to the states. But what we need, obviously, as an ultimate goal is not that killing babies is okay in one state and not okay in another state, because that still doesn't get to the core of the issue. The core of the issue is Roe v. Wade said the word person, as used in the Constitution, does not include the unborn. We need to get the court to say the word person, as used in the Constitution, does include the unborn. So it's not just that a state may protect them, it's that it must protect them. That's where we need to get.
And that's where we're going. And with the education work that I know that Priests for Life does, particularly throughout the Catholic Church, your outreach to really remind Catholics what their actual foundation of their faith is. Again, it's not by accident that the governor of California says he's a Catholic.
You see?
The previous governor of California said he was a Catholic. That Governor Cuomo says he's a Catholic. Nancy Pelosi, whose district we stand in. And so it's very important that the Catholic faith be taught to Catholics, the actual truth of the faith, and that falsehood be confronted for what it is, because what we're looking at isn't merely a minor error.
Right.
We're looking at, just as we did in slavery, a true moral and legal evil.
Exactly.
And so this proclamation by Governor Cuomo saying that no, it isn't about being unpregnant. It isn't about ending a pregnancy. That's often the shibboleth they use. A woman has a right to terminate a pregnancy. No, Mayor Cuomo and the state of New York has said, no, it's about killing that baby. So even if the baby's born alive, you can now kill that baby with impunity, because in principle, you're stronger, you own that baby. And again, it's the very same principle of slavery, that you can own another human being and that the value of that life can be dismissed. So that significance cannot be lost on pro-lifers. We need to make sure that this premise that stronger human beings, if they're in a situation, and we're seeing that in nursing homes now, where the elderly, the infirm, and the depressed, if you are in a position of power, now in California, you can actually take that life, and it can be justified under the idea that, well, they wanted to die, and it's actually being said now, If they could say so, they would tell you they wanted to die. What's known as substituted judgment. In my judgment, it would be better for you to be dead, Father, and if you could only speak and tell us right now, you would do it, so I'm going to kill you.
Right.
And that's justified.
So dangerous.
It's under the law. That's legal now as a doctrine of substituted judgment, that a third person can say, I have that authority, and I'm making that decision, I'm taking this life, because they're weaker than me. That's the same principle we had in slavery. A human being that is weaker is actually the very human being that the law should be protecting. Yeah. It's the reason we hire policemen and give them badges. They're there to protect the lives of those that can't protect themselves, that don't have that ability. So the duty of the state, if anything, the duties of the state are limited, but they're clearly limited to the self-evident truth that they need to protect the lives of those who are governed. And so what's at stake here is so much bigger than just how we feel about babies.
Right.
Or even our personal faith.
Right.
Our personal faith is very, very important. We're actually talking about the basis of civilization.
And that's why when people ask me, obviously as a priest and heading up Priests for Life, they say, oh, well, these people are Catholic. And as we mentioned before, it's a sad commentary on how diluted the term Catholic has become and an obvious need in the church for more solid teaching. However, when they ask me those questions, I go back and focus on the underlying truth, which you're saying, in other words, that the offense that someone like Governor Cuomo has made here is not simply a contradiction of the faith he claims to embrace. It is, but it's also a contradiction of the public service he claims to be providing. You can't be a public servant in America if you can't tell the difference between serving the public and killing the public. You're undermining not just your stated faith, you're undermining what the idea of government is all about in the first place. And unless and until we get back to that, people are going to think that they can isolate this debate in the convenient boxes of people's different religious beliefs. It's like the example, I think we've discussed it before. I say, listen, Catholics can't steal because in the Catechism it says don't steal, and in the Bible it says don't steal. So what are we going to say? Oh, we have religious freedom in America. I don't have to be a Catholic. Therefore, I can steal. Right? This is the argument they're trying to make when it comes to abortion, and it just doesn't hold water.
Yeah, exactly right. It's an attack on the family as well, because many, many abortions are aimed at youth. And Planned Parenthood, we know, targets youth, and in principle, they're under the authority of their parents.
Yes.
But what we see in the abortion industry is an intentional effort to cut them out of the parents' lives, to cut them out of the family.
Right.
And that their grandchildren, parents are having their grandchildren killed without their knowledge or consent. Their children are secreted away from them, literally taken from school in some cases.
Yes.
And yet that's the law, and that's legal in California and in many, many states.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.